Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show today. I'm Russell Hobbs, your host, and we have a very special guest in the studio, my longtime friend, Jim Heath, a.k.a. Reverend Horton Heath.
Hi, all right.
So it's just going to be so great to visit today. And, you are this illustrious tour icon now, and we had lunch a little while back, and it was very enjoyable. And we just, we covered and went on so many different topics. And I was thinking, we need to do a show where we're catching up with people just like this, like rekindling friendships and hanging out and talking about things going on in our lives.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
So here we are.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. So what's the latest? Let's talk about current events for a moment. What are you working right now? What's your passionate thing right now that you're digging?
Well, my really passionate thing is that I'm trying to bring back good, fun rock and roll. And so there's many facets to that. Like the main facet is that I just keep doing what I do. I go play 150 shows a year all over the world, or lately mainly just in America because of all this mess. But then the other facet of that is I've got a little record label that it was a vanity record label, but that's starting to heat up. I'm starting to get some other artists, so where it's like what I'm telling people, it's a lot less vain than a vanity.
It's not all about you.
It's right. Wow. So and then I've got a radio show that's called Rock and Roll Music Radio with the Reverend Horton Heath. And that's kind of an interesting thing because it's a total throwback to the early days of radio. It's on AM radio. It's not even, they broadcast it over the internet, but it's not even like a podcast. A lot of people are doing podcasts, which is cool. That's what we're doing now and here today. But this is old-fashioned AM radio, which is like when I was a kid and getting into music. It
was a beautiful, mysterious time.
Don't touch that dial. We're gonna rock and roll. All that stuff. So, that, and yeah, that's taken up most of all of my time, and so I'm besides being a dad, I'm a pretty busy guy. So,
yes. Well, the touring you do is the most beautiful art form. The theater, that live show, the live touring is the perishable art form that everyone should appreciate the most. Mm-hmm. And it's hard work, right?
It's hard work. Well, I enjoy playing music more now than I did when I was younger, because when I was younger, we had a great band, had some great guys. Every time I changed members, it was always great. But there was so much pressure, it's like we'd go into a new town and we'd have a gig at, Mark's Barrel of Fun. Like, okay, everybody, let's play good because we hope Mark likes us so we can get another gig here maybe at Mark's Barrel of Fun. That type of pressure eventually turned into like, well, Tony Ferguson from Interscope Records is going to be here. We better play good and then that turned into, well, we better play good because, MTV is filming us or whatever, and now none of that. That's all out the window. Could care less. I get up there and let it rip. If I decide, I'm going to play over the top and just play like this, even if it's wrong. I'm having fun.
That's awesome. So
letting it rip.
Instead of following the next carrot, you have complete artistic control now.
Basically.
Because you're an artist.
Because I guess in some parts of my mind, it's hard to give yourself artistic creative control because you live in a world where, and especially with music, where, you're trying to please other people. And if you can't please anybody else, you're not going to play gigs. So there's a trade-off. You have to, there's a balance. You have to do what inspires your heart. But if what inspires your heart isn't going to inspire anybody else, then it's not really, you know what I'm saying. But
Yeah, the reciprocal relationship between you and your fans. And even now, you probably have to play some old hits that you may not want to play that night. But in general,
yeah, and frankly, I don't mind playing the old hits. It's fun, and that's one thing about music is it's a little bit different take every time we play Loaded Gun or Rockin' Dog or one of those older songs like that. That's the beautiful thing about music is it's not like a movie. If you make a movie, that's it. You don't do it again. Right, let's make that movie, and so, but music, it's a different thing, and we're getting to something that's kind of important to me about this too, is that, music it's not a technological art form. It's live. Like the art form for me, at least from my point of view. And I don't want to diss the recording artist side of it, but to me, making a record is almost like making an advertisement for your band. And the real art form is like you were talking about, playing live to people, because it definitely it's a conversation in the sense that, not in the sense that we're the ones saying everything, you're blasting your music, but the feedback you get from the audience can change everything about the whole show and about how you play and all sorts of things about it. So, and my argument is the greatest musicians in history never even made a recording. As far as I know, there's not a recording of Mozart or Beethoven.
Right, good point. See
what I'm saying? So and I don't want to diss the recording arts, and I love recording. In fact, I that's part of what I do. I build these microphones that are like old style tube microphones, and I have all this old recording gear, and I've got me a little studio, and we make records. But you know what I'm saying.
Well, no, your point is,
I get too long-winded.
Recording music allows you the ability to do things like the Beatles and Pink Floyd do in a studio with a great producer like George Martin, and you can make layers and just amazing mystical beauty. But the transcendence of a live music experience where the artist is one with the crowd, you're like a vessel of this energy, and we could talk all day about it. It's a totally different thing, and that's why I said it's perishable, and really it's the ultimate. I mean, we just went through the whole lockdown of the universe where you couldn't tour and all that stuff. So thank God all that's back. So let me ask you the next question.
Okay.
If you have a response to that. Anyway. So how'd you get into music, Jim?
Well, it started when I was a kid. My mother, it was in church and in my grandparents' church. And then my hearing music in church, and then being exposed to it through the radio and things like that. And then I was just talking about this or writing about it the other day. The Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I was one of those millions of kids that saw that, and my jaw hit the floor. And the next day I asked my mom and dad for a guitar, and so that was a big catalyst of the whole guitar rock and roll movement. And so, there was that. And then, I could sense how exciting music could be. And then there was, other incidents in my life that, helped me learn about music and got me more into music. I mean, when I was, kind of a snot-nosed El Stupido, middle schooler, I was riding my bike to the local record store, and probably to buy a Black Sabbath or an Alice Cooper album. And the guy had a great blues collection, and he was playing blues in his store. It was the older blues of Howlin' Wolf and Sonny Boy Williamson. And I heard that and I thought, this is way cooler than Black Sabbath. Definitely. And so I left with a Sonny Boy Williamson record, and I can't remember. I got a couple of them. And
you were getting to the roots of where all the rock and roll came from.
It was something that was just so cool, and it was something different in it, but it was, and then a lot of it had a cool beat, and so that kind of led me into other things. And then there's been turning points in my life, like the movie American Graffiti was a big turning point because I realized how cool the music of the 50s was. And but there's all sorts of things, you know, and like I'm into all sorts of different kinds of music. So I could just like randomly start talking and get so long-winded. I can get long-winded.
Let me ask you this: go back to when you said that you were playing music in the church. You said the church was part of your music. How you got into music. So, and then you said you bought a guitar. So were you playing like piano in the church, or were you singing in the choir? Were you actually part of the church?
Well, I got to sing in the choir, but then once I got into guitar, they had me just playing guitar in the choir.
So you were part of the team.
Play guitar and sing a little bit, but it was more guitar stuff. And my mother grew up in a Church of Christ, which was church, and then my mom's side of the family, they're still Church of Christ, and I don't know if they still do this, but they used to not allow musical instruments.
That's right, all a cappella.
Right, which my mother was amazing. She could sing four-part harmonies when she was a little girl. She was really good at that, and so from her side, I got that kind of thing, and then she liked AM radio, and so that's really where I got my rock and roll. But she wasn't really into country, but my dad was, and so but they weren't rock and roll. They had me later in life. They were big band that was there when they were kids. That's what they did, when jitterbugged to big band music, and but then they liked all those musicals, and when we were kids, we saw all of them, all those like Sound of Music and The King and I and The Music Man and Carousel, Oklahoma, all that.
So you were influenced by music within the church and also country music from your dad, and then you got into early blues and rock and roll. So a real eclectic blend of influences early on.
Yeah,
Okay,
I mean, when I really started branching off into what I wanted to like or what I was getting into, it was rock and roll. And like I said, you know, the hard rock stuff, you know, I loved the ZZ Top and all that stuff. But then all of a sudden I found the old blues, and it really changed me. My first band, I was finally good enough to get in a band. I practiced guitar a lot, and I was in a 50s band, you know, but then I got better. They kicked me out of that band because I really wasn't good enough to be in that band, and that made me mad. So I started practicing even harder, and so. But yeah, that's another thing about me. There's several things about my career that are kind of crazy. I mean, one thing that's crazy is that I practiced after I got kicked out of that band. I started practicing really hard, and a couple of guys that were in that band started another band about a year later, and guess who was the lead guitar player? Me, because I'd gotten so much better that I didn't, you know, I really, you know, focused and locked in on it. And that band, it was called Southern Comfort. Nice. And we were in high school. We were making as much as $500 and $700 on shows. That's in the 70s, and we were high school kids because it was South Texas. There weren't a lot of bands like us around, and so we played almost every weekend. We'd play high school dances, we'd play clubs, we'd play. There was the place we made the $700. That was like a big old giant 2,000 capacity, and we'd fill it up. 2,000 capacity, like a dance hall. And it would just be full of every high school student from South Texas would come to these gigs. So I kind of learned that I could make money playing music at a pretty young age. And
That's beautiful. Let me ask you this now. You, from what I know about your music experience and just seeing you and, way back in the 80s and seeing you now and everything, you're a really good guitar player. You are a great showman. You're a great songwriter. I mean, you're the whole package. So, having buttered you up to say all that, I'll say this. When you were in that band making $600 or $700 a week back there, were you writing songs and able to bring songs to the band, or were you just really a guitar player?
I was mainly just really a guitar player. That little band, we would play a couple of our own songs that were still somewhat kind of lifted, maybe anyway, from other bands, But yeah, no, that was another journey because I wasn't a lead singer, and I wasn't really a very good backup singer because I didn't do harmonies. I could do shout vocals. And so, but I started writing my own songs, and and I was in another band that was pretty good, that was all over the circuit, and I started writing my own songs and realized that it was very difficult to try to talk singers into wanting to sing this song that I wrote. So I realized I'm going to have to be a singer. So nice. I started working on my singing, working on it. And that endeavor actually is still going. But I've got so I had to do that. And,
okay, so I know you were in a band with your wife, right, at the Polytones.
Yes.
So in the Polytones, were you collaborating in a collaborative way to write songs with your wife? Is that where your songwriting started?
We started doing that, but that band almost was not even a real band because we only played like one or two shows. It was very difficult for us to find a bass player and drummer who wanted to come and play our songs. And then the ones that we could find, it was very difficult to get them to rehearse as much as we needed to rehearse to make it all work. And so that wasn't the band before that me and her were in before that was a band called Sweetbriar. And Sweetbriar was a touring band. We would play all over the region, and I did that from 78 to really about 81. And that taught me a lot about life on the road, about how to deal with real agents and promoters and that kind of thing. And I learned a lot in that band. And but my ex-wife, Jenny, and me, that's where we met, was in that band. Then we had the Polytones. We were trying to write songs. But then in the process, I really started focusing back on roots music. And so I joined another band called Teddy and the Tall Tops in what I call the Great Rockabilly Scare of 1983. That was a really good band, and we kind of got big in Dallas almost overnight. It was like immediately we were getting 2 and 3 and 4 gigs we could play every week. And so, that was okay. I'm getting long-winded. I'm talking about all this stuff, but
no, that's good. So the purpose of this interview today, and really we're just two guys that love each other, having fun, and it's really about knowing who you are, where you came from, what made you tick. Because people that love you and know your music, they don't really know how it all came to be.
Yeah,
and people don't realize this. It's a long road to the top if you want to rock and roll, right? It's like
that's a good song.
As a child, you started dreaming about your music. You were playing at the church. Everybody. It takes years to get really good at what you have become, and it's taken. And people don't realize all that, because sometimes now you just throw a YouTube video or YouTube video, you're a YouTube sensation and you pack a club with 1,500 and sell merch and you can't even play an instrument. Okay. So you're the real thing, a nitty gritty, rootsy artist that makes transcendent songs that everybody digs. So how you got there is I think, a beautiful reality and a story that needs to be told.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's a strange thing, and I do have some insights that I think that not a lot of other people have because of all the different bands and situations and things that I was in. Because it's kind of crazy. I mean, a fan of ours said that I guess the Grateful Dead has the record for the most rock band, the rock band that's played the most shows. And he said, he contacted us. He goes, I think you blew away the Grateful Dead a long time ago, because I think we've played around 6,000 shows. And, you do that. I mean, that's just Reverend Horton Heath. When you go and do all the other bands I was in, but yeah, there's I've got some interesting perspectives that I don't think a lot of other people have. And one of them is that, I was in this band that was in high school. I was in this band, Southern Comfort. Well, then everybody in that band, we were high school kids. Everybody wanted to go to college, and the band broke up. And so I did the same thing. I went to the University of Texas, and I wasn't doing very well. And I was in this classroom, and it was one of these social studies type of a class. I can't remember what it was called, but it was in a giant auditorium at the University of Texas at Austin. And it had two professors that you could tell they were friends, and they would give lectures kind of together, like, okay, Bob, what do you think? Well, more to your point, Sam, I think that blah, 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 and we need a blah, 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 blah. Well, one day they started talking about communism. They said, Karl Marx just wanted people to have time to read a book instead of living this terrible life where they have to just go to work every day and come home and then repeat.
And a life of leisure and intellect.
Right, and read a book and enjoy the arts and blah, blah, blah. And they're like going, now see, in Russia, they have it all worked out. They said, and you just watch, the standard of living in Russia over the next 10 years is going to be so high, it'll blow away our standard of living here in the United States of America. And I was thinking to myself, this is a bunch of bull, and I thought I wasn't doing very well in college. And I was thinking, maybe I'm not doing very well is because these guys aren't teaching me anything right now. I'm not learning anything. I'm getting something that I don't want. And so I left that class. I went straight to my dorm room and made a little ad and put it up at Heart of Texas Music, guitar player available. And that's how I got in Sweetbriar. They called me like 2 days later and said, can you play this weekend? We're going on the road. I said, yeah. And I left college. I just left.
That is amazing. I never knew that part of your life. And it's so parallel, our lives parallel, which we'll probably get to today. I was at school at North Texas and got discouraged with the art department and then business school, and ended up leaving and going and saying screw it all, and moved in a ghost town downtown that now people call Deep Ellum. Isn't that odd?
That's cool.
I never knew you were at North Texas.
Yeah, no, and so I cut my losses and I left. But what was really funny, Russell, is that that was 1978 when I did that, when those guys were lecturing me. And it was so funny because they had the perfect little white tennis shoes, and they had these like feathered haircuts like they used to have in the 70s. You could, they had money and everything, they were telling us this stuff about communism or whatever. Well, 12 or 13 years after that, the Soviet Union, Russia, fell. And people got a firsthand glimpse of what was going on there, and it was terrible. Well, about 3 weeks, about 4 weeks after the fall of the Soviet Union, I got to go to the Soviet Union and see firsthand how their standard of living. They lived in these tenement-style buildings with no indoor toilets. Their grocery store, the shelves were empty and it smelled like human feces inside the grocery store. There was one piece of meat and a line out the door. And we asked the lady, we said, why are these people standing in line? And she said, they're just hoping that a truck with food will show up. So they'll wait all day. And if by the time they get tired at night, if no truck came, they'll just go home hungry. She was a teacher and she told us, I'm one of the highest paid people in this town. And her salary per month was $28 US equivalent per month. And so it was a terrible place. Nobody had any money. And it's just interesting that I left UT because of these guys that were telling me how great it was in the Soviet Union and how their standard of living was going to blow so far past us. And what they were telling me was the exact opposite of what was happening. And so I was like thinking to myself, I'm glad I left UT. That was a bunch of bull.
Well, I misunderstood. I thought you said you were at North Texas when that happened.
No, I'm sorry. No, I wasn't at North Texas. I was at UT Austin.
Okay, did you ever go to North Texas?
No, I never went to North Texas, but I do have a connection there because Reverend Horton Heath started playing gigs in Denton a lot, and I got to know college professors and students and all sorts of people in Denton. So,
okay, well, let's talk about, so you grew up, and then you were in several bands, and you sort of grew up in the business. You learned how to tour with Sweetbriar. And so what was going on and what brought you back to Dallas? How did you end up being the sound guy? Because here's where I met you, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Is I left college for the same disillusionary factors. And so I go to Deep Ellum, moved into Ghost Town because I didn't like shiny Dallas. My thing was I was selling oil. I was like in a building at 635 and 75 selling oil wildcat deals to old ladies, with all these douchebag guys at this office. And it was terrible. So I just ripped off my tie one day and drove away and went and rented a place in this ghost town, it's called Deep Ellum. And then all of a sudden a year later, I believe, maybe about a year later, because we started Theater Gallery in 84, and I think it was in 85, you were the sound guy. And you had brought your system, and your dog Smokey was there with earplugs.
Oh yeah, I had to bring him to one or two gigs because she was out of town, and I don't know what happened, but yeah.
So what I don't know about the story though is how you got from being in Sweetbriar and Polytones to being the sound guy there.
Well, what happened is me and Jenny left Sweetbriar. And slowly people basically left us. We didn't really leave Sweetbriar, the band. And in the 70s, things were really different. Like all the bands on our circuit, you were required to bring the sound system and lights. And at one point in Sweetbriar, we had a truck full of lights and sound gear and all this stuff. But as people started leaving, we sold it, and then all of a sudden, I was left with this PA system that was pretty good, not the greatest, but I had enough microphones and a big enough mixer that I could do some bigger shows. And so I realized, and then Jenny got pregnant. And I had to make money. I had to find a way to make money. And so I ran an ad, and I don't even remember where the ad was, if I ran it in Buddy Magazine or if it was another deal at the music store. I put something up in the music store, sound, PA system and sound man available, blah, blah, blah. And one of your first gigs that you booked was a band called The End.
Yeah, the end was just right.
The end. And David Mabry realized that they needed a PA, and he called me up. And so I brought my PA, and one of the first gigs you had down there was the end, and I had my PA, and then you came up and you said, "Hey, man, we might need you a lot here, you know?" And so I said, well, "Okay, I'll do it," you know? And so that was a great time in my life. It was a hard time personally, because I think that, you know, I was branching out into my own music that really didn't involve Jenny, and I really want to get into all that, because you know, Jenny's a wonderful person, but it was leading to a divorce. I got married too young. I was too young, and it's one of the regrets of my life is that divorce, because. But you know, I mean, you know, I've got a beautiful life now. I've been married to Andrea for almost 22 years, and we've been together for almost 30 years. So, you know, so we got kids and all that. But
yeah, divorce.
But I'm getting off track. But anyway, so I got to be next thing you know, I was a sound guy, and you were calling me Horton, and a lot of people call me Big Jim. Big Jim.
Big Jim. Sounds like okay.
I
wanted to say divorce is a really tragic thing, but you look back and you weren't capable to be a married person for all those reasons, you and your spouse, and then you know, God's sovereignty, he gives you a new wife and you have a great life. And I'm the same situation. I look back and it's tragic when divorce happens, and it's sad, but sometimes we're not able to make a marriage work, you know? So back to, you say the end. That's so funny, because the end, you know, David and Tench, and it's not really a show about the theater gallery. This is your show today. But I remember the gig that David called you for. It must have been the second time that the end played at Theater Gallery, because the first time was a New Year's Eve party with Robert Lee Cobb, and he brought a PA.
Oh, I see.
So it was like a month later, because the end started playing every month. So it was a month later that the end called you and brought that PA.
Oh,
must have been.
Okay, yeah.
Interesting.
I didn't know that. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's good to know.
So you were the sound guy, but you were writing, because I remember. Uh-huh. So let's talk about you were. The memory that sticks out huge to me is we were in the backyard at the Prophet Bar one day. So for anybody that doesn't know, the Theater Gallery started in '84 in a ghost town in Deep Ellum, and then a year later we opened the Prophet Bar across the street, and Jim was doing sound. But I remember there's one day we're in the backyard of the Prophet Bar, and I don't know, you're like, "Hey, check out this new song," and it was. You start singing, "Where in the hell?" Now, I'm singing Reverend Horton Heath in front of Reverend Horton Heath. Okay? That takes balls. So here we go. "Where in the hell did you go with my toothbrush? You left it." I should have you sing it. But anyway. And I was like, damn, that song's awesome, man. And that's when you were struggling with the marriage and everything. So tell me all about that. I mean, you know.
Well, you know, I wanted to write my own songs, and getting back to, you know, those other bands I'd been in, like the Sweetbriar thing, you know, in those days, if you played your own original song, they would fire you, you know, and the club owners would basically like say, well, you can play one, but if you play more than one original song, you can't play here anymore. And so on the whole circuit, there were only 3 bands that could play their original music. And we all knew that no record label would sign anybody unless they had their own songs. And so it was a real catch-22. And so, you know, my dream was to be one of those bands that could play my own music and actually play gigs at clubs doing that. And so, you know, when I got the chance to play my own songs, when you started booking me, I mean, it was a dream come true. I mean, it was something that at that point, I just wanted to make it work in small clubs. I thought rockabilly and these little kind of half country songs, I'll never be a rock star doing this, but I could probably play, some cool gigs around here and all this other stuff. And I had no idea what it was going to lead to.
So think about it. What you're saying now and what's come together is you were stripped down. Your marriage didn't work. You missed your daughter and you're writing songs about the pain. And you and I are sitting in the backyard in Deep Ellum when there was still at that point, there was probably two clubs, the Theater Gallery and the Prophet Bar, and maybe Naomi's and Adair's. And there wasn't any other club there yet. Right. And we're sitting in the backyard and you played that song. And I'm like, man, you got to get on stage tonight. And you said, no, I need a band and everything. I said, no, you don't. Just get up there with your guitar. And it's like you started doing every Monday night.
Yep. Well, you started talking to me about doing that. It was before you had the Prophet Bar because you said, I want you to help open the Prophet Bar. And it was the second week. I played a Thursday, I think the second week of the Prophet Bar.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, but it's like I always say, like if I thought it was that important, I would have written it down. But you're just doing all this stuff. You don't really stop to think to like chronicle everything, like because you never know what's actually going to be memorable or something. Just anyway, but
no, you're right. The way our memory works, maybe my memory of the backyard hearing that song was after you already started playing other songs at the Prophet Bar on different gigs, but your every Monday night thing is what kicked in.
Well, listen, you might not remember it like I do, but I'll tell you how I remember it is that you told me, you said, I'm opening up a new club called the Prophet Bar, and I want you to play a week from Thursday. And that was, I think, the first weekend you had somebody like maybe New Bohemians or somebody like that played. And somebody else at the Prophet Bar, but I got the after that first weekend, what I remember, and you said, just be here on Thursday. And so I said, okay. And I was setting up my amp in the afternoon. Nobody was there yet. The bartenders were kind of setting up, or the staff was getting ready, but there was no crowd or people there. It was the afternoon, and I'm setting up my little rig. And you walked up on stage and you said, your stage name is going to be Reverend Horton Heath, okay? And I said, no, that's not okay at all. I said, so now you're giving me a stage name? I said, this gig is getting to be a little bit more than I thought it was going to be. So I was like thinking, I didn't even know what to think about that. And you just kind of walked off. And then my very first set, there were like at least 40 people in there. They were applauding. They were listening to my songs. It was like a dream come true.
Original art.
Hallelujah. This is working. I mean, I get chills thinking about it right now, how much that affected me. So all of a sudden, but then after the first set, people were coming up to me saying, Reverend, that was really good. I'm going, wait a minute, what? Reverend Horton, that was really good. I'm like, wait a minute, what happened here? But it was like, I was so grateful that, that I said, okay, I guess I'm Reverend Horton Heath.
Okay, well, let me add to that memory because what I remember this happening. First of all, Tom Battle's brother, okay, the band that was on the bill that night, because I never said Reverend. I'm just going to say, I came up with Horton Heath because your name's Jim Heath, because Horton Foote was shooting a movie in Waxahachie called Trip to Bountiful. And so when Jeff Lyles, who, of course I gave him his start and gave him his booking gig, and he loves me. But remember the Beat Orgy? We did Beat Orgy. So Jeff's like, hey, so we put this band together for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And it was Beat Orgy. I got to sing a Stones song. I was like Anthony and the the Flea were down standing on the concrete watching me sing, a Stone song, which, that was fun. And you were in the Beat Orgy. But when you were doing Folsom Prison Blues before the Chili Pepper show at Theater Gallery, and your nose was like honking against the mic, that's when I thought of like Horton, and Horton Foot was in town. It's like, that's why I said Horton Heath. But to clarify, we put Elvis from Hell was on that Thursday night gig with you, and you were the headliner.
Oh, yeah.
So Tom Battle's little brother, who was Elvis from Hell, I forgot his first name, he made a flyer, and it said Reverend Horton Heat on the flyer. So that kid, he's out there listening
No, I still keep
TV
I haven't talked to his John Battles for quite a while, but we still keep in touch. He lives in Chicago, and
so you still talk to him. He's the one that put Reverend on it.
Still talk to him.
Okay.
Oh, really?
At the
Okay.
Prophet Bar. So just wanted to clarify that. Give him his props. So it all came together. We lived in a hurricane of beautiful artistic energy and spontaneity at that moment, because the whole music scene was just coming together in Deep Ellum, and everybody was coming down there, and all these bands were popping up out of nowhere. I was like, get rid of your clone shirt and start a band or make a painting. And actually, the whole movement, it was the zeitgeist of the day. People were getting down to the roots of who they were and being original.
Right.
And for you to get up and sing your original songs through that season.
Oh, it's super important. In fact, you may not even realize, because getting back to what I was saying about our old rock and roll circuit, all the rock and roll clubs there were only 3 bands that I can remember that could get by playing their own music. And so you come in and you wanted all of the bands, hey, play your own stuff. I mean, that was a big turning point. And that's why you and Deep Ellum got so much major label interest, is because there was an explosion of music, original music. It changed a lot of things, the way people look at the way clubs looked at their artists and what they were trying to promote. So
I really believe it was a moment in time. It was the zeitgeist of the day of the 80s in 84, that everybody was sick of shiny buildings and cover bands. And so it was happening around the nation. It wasn't just I was the pioneer of the Deep Ellum scene, and I brought in Jeff, and he was awesome putting together bands, and he and I built a scene together, But really, it happened in Athens, Georgia. You had REM. There was a music scene in Athens. There was a music scene in Boston, and even in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis area, whatever. So it was kind of happening around the nation. There was
and I got all those bands were coming through Theater Gallery, and I got to be the sound guy, or I got to be like the loader. I was my PA, and I would help coordinate adding other PA if we needed more PA. So I worked some cool shows, like that one show where Michael Stipe showed up and sang. I was the sound guy on that show. And then Husker Du came through, and you're talking about Minneapolis, and they needed extra sound, so we had to get more sound equipment added onto mine. And eventually you got Creighton and another sound company, because I was really, I was just a guy that had a somewhat adequate PA to pull off some shows, So eventually you had to get a bigger, better, more professional PA guy, because I was a musician. And then at the same time, too, I was going out playing gigs with other bands, which is what I really wanted to do.
That's what I was about to say. You were the humble servant sound guy for a little season. But once Reverend Horton,
I got to work with the Butthole Surfers and the Pandoras. And I mean, the list of shows that I got to work and be there on were really cool. And, it was hard work. I would be there a lot of times, loading out at 4 a.m. But you know what? It was so much fun. It was just so cool, and so many great stories and so much great music. And that was a great learning experience too, because I got to deal with the Replacements and these touring bands that had, they had some serious road crew, lighting director, sound guys.
Oh yeah,
all that.
Let me. I have to interrupt you, because this is the good stuff. No, your band took off. So you were doing the gig at the Arcadia with Smiling Jack Barton going down, Dwight Yoakam, y'all opened for Arcadia. And of course, Mark Lee was influential in all this stuff. Mark was putting locals on the tours. Mark brought us a lot of tours at Theater Gallery, which made all the local bands want to come and play. Right. And, you know, that's my philosophy for 37 years in the music business was always put locals on touring shows. And I really learned it back then in 84 and 85 with Mark Lee. You know, that's what made our scene blow up, you know. But when you were at Greenville Bar and Grill doing Love Whip, you know, of course we didn't want you to do sound anymore because we'd grown up, the bands were bigger, we had more budget for sound and lights. And, you know, it was what's beautiful I wanted to point out was it was this crossing time in a moment in time where you were the humble sound guy at Theater Gallery writing your songs, but then all of a sudden you took off on stage and you had a band come together, and we wouldn't have wanted, you know, you weren't the sound guy anymore. You're the artist again. Yeah,
no, it was a dream come true, and it really, that first year, the Beat Orgy gig I think might have been in December of 85, and then my first gig with you at Profit Bar was, I'm not sure of the date, but it's you know, January or February of 86. And by the end of 86, we were playing Austin, Houston. We were doing a lot of shows all over the place. By the end, one of the early 86, I didn't have a band. It was just me. Then I started being able to hire some guys. The gigs at the Profit Bar started getting better and better. So I started bringing in guys to come play. And yeah, so it was that first year was quite the rocket ride. It was.
Yeah, I'll tell you the exact date of that first. The Beat Orgy gig was we opened for the Red Hot Chili Peppers' first tour in Dallas. It was December 85 because Anthony and the Flea came upstairs at the Profit Bar, and we had just opened, and the first Profit Bar flyer had Sitting Bull on it. And Anthony's like, man, that's really cool. And he got Sitting Bull tattooed on his arm. Like,
what on his arm? What?
You know, the Indian chief, Sitting Bull.
Oh, Sitting Bull. Right? I see, yeah. Uh-huh.
So the first Profit Bar flyer in like October, November of 85 was Sitting Bull. And, you know, I still got it. And so Anthony saw that. Now he's got that on his arm. So Anthony, now, you know, good, nice tattoo. You should have put Jim on your arm. So anyway, that's when that happened. And then you started solo at the Profit Bar like in January, February. And the band just came around you and it all just took off.
Yep.
So Deep Ellum was a very beautiful underground artistic scene where people all knew each other and really appreciated each other's art. People used to go see other bands. You would go see other bands' gigs in the scene, right? And you'd have poets on the street. It was just a beautiful thing, right? Now it's a big, grown-up, commercialized.
Well, yeah, situation. you know, I will say this though: it's commercialized and it's kind of hard to deal with because there's almost too many people down there now, or if there is too many people, but there still are, you know, pockets of artistic people that are still down there,
yes.
You know, that work out of their little warehouses and have their photographic studios or their art gallery or their art studio or whatever. And so it's, you know.
It's overtaken by commerciality, but it's still.
A little bit, but there's still some pockets down there.
It's still the place to see.
8 Airs is still there.
Yeah, it's still the place to see the best bands. Or see an art opening or something like that. It still remains as the mainstay of the art vibe and the nitty gritty good stuff. Even though you got to dig a little deeper to see it now. So let's move to this. I wanted to ask you your writing process. I mean, just quickly, do you write like in a way of you're driving around thinking of a song concept for a long time, mostly? Or does a song just hit you in the middle of the night? Or I mean, how do you get songs mostly?
Well, both of that. You know, a lot of times it is driving. You know, one thing about driving a car is that nobody can hear me singing and caterwauling. I'm going down the road, you know, you know, and the dangerous thing is I could crash my car. But but yeah, no, and then so you just got to be open. I'm very open to the concepts. That's where it really, like, writing is two different things. Like, the first thing is the concept, and in that respect, you have to be willing to be open-minded and to be ready to see something that might be a good concept for a song. And sometimes I'll just write a title. Sometimes it'll just be a good line, and then I'll finish it out later. Sometimes I'll think of it. The next thing you know, I've got two or three verses, and I've got it all. Now I do it on my phone. I used to have it on my notebook. So different things, you just got to be ready, because you never know where it's going to lead you. I have one song that called "That's Showbiz." That the song came to me in a dream. I dreamed myself on stage. It's a spoken word song. It's not a melody. So it's a whole kind of a spoken word story. And it's me up there talking on this microphone, and the band's playing. It's a smoky lounge. And I woke up and I thought to myself, I got to write this down. So I got my notebook and I started writing. It was like 3 a.m, and about 4:30 in the morning I'd finished. And so it all came to me in a dream. I wrote it down and went back to bed.
That's beautiful. Not only that, but that one lends itself to a music video, because you already see the video.
Oh yeah,
that'd be beautiful to do.
Yeah, I could still see it in my mind. The dream, it was one of those dreams. Sometimes you forget dreams, and some of them you just like. Well, and I might have forgotten that one if I hadn't have forced myself to wake up and go write it down, because, and that's kind of, I think that's one key to any art, is that once you have the idea of anything, you need to just know that could be powerful. You need to write it down. And some things maybe not that powerful. Some of the ideas I've had for songs, later I'll be going through, going, nah, but some of them have just blossomed into these crazy things, So, but music is a little different than just being a poet, So, like the "In Your Wildest Dreams," that was totally just a melody that I hum. And play guitar, and I had the whole arrangement. I even had a solo, and I was playing it in the rehearsal, just going, doing this little thing. And Jimbo was in there, and he said, "Why don't you call it 'In Your Wildest Dreams'?" I said, "Okay." And so that song has been in more TV shows and movies than any of our other songs.
That's a very good thing.
So that's good,
So here's the next question. And because we're getting close to the end of our time.
Oh no, okay.
It's like some people say there is no such thing as time, but I think it's a very real thing. It's a measure, but it's also like, it seems like sometimes you just have to realize nothing lasts forever. Just like our show today.
Right.
We do have to stop somewhere.
That's right.
So here's my next question. Is, and I ask this to every guest, what do you think about God?
Well, I grew up in the church, but then I left all that and kind of forgot about it, and kind of basically thought about that maybe there wasn't a God. And but then I came back in and I realized a lot of stuff, and over time, I know there is a God, and I know that God works miracles, but I also know God put us here for free will, and He doesn't want us to just be a puppet. Why would He do that? Why just, okay, I'll put all these people on this planet, and then I'll tell them what to. They'll do what I tell them to. He put us on here, giving us free will. So but about the whole thing, I think so many people that don't believe in God. My challenge to them is to on a beautiful afternoon where the sun is shining after a thunderstorm, go look at the clouds in the sky and tell me there is not a God. You look at that beauty, that there's a lot of other things I could give examples for. A baby smiling at you. That kind of, but like those pictures NASA brings back of the universe. It's these multicolored clouds, and it's, so I believe, I believe and know in my heart that there is a God, and I am a Christian. I believe Jesus died for my sins, and I think if people repent and ask for Jesus into their heart, I think that it's a life-changing thing. And but I don't talk a lot about it, and I just, it's a little bit more of a personal and a family kind of thing, but
well, that's a beautiful perspective on the subject. And I like to reinforce what you said about the creation, that you're just talking about, the sunset, the clouds, the universe proves. It says in Romans 1 that the creation is evidence that there is a creator and a God, because there's no way that this beauty all happened by accident.
Right, and that beauty is a loving gift. It means God loves us.
Amen. That's really good. So that's a great time for me to mention our main sponsor of today's show. Here's Russell Hobbs' new book that you can get at russelldavidhobbs.newbook or wherever out there. You know how social media works nowadays. This is a book that I wrote over maybe a 5 to 10 year period. And it's, you sort of alluded to it. Why are we here? For so much of my life, I didn't know my purpose. I really didn't know what we're here for. And I really was a seeker. When I moved into Deep Ellum in my 59 Mercedes convertible, it's because I was disenchanted with the mall of Dallas. And I knew there must be more. And I actually found more. I found people like you. And, it went on to where I ended up, God found me. And so this book is about the struggles, the suffering, the chaos and confusion of life, and why we're here. And what I found out through my process of seeking is that we are living in God's theme park. And everything we see, from the apple falling from the tree and a new tree grows out of that. That's a picture of the resurrection, or the clouds and the storms in our life and everything. So everything's a metaphoric theme park that we're walking through to find the truth. So had to plug my book today. But I just want to say it's been great talking to you, my friend. And thank you for coming by to our studios high atop a secret mountain somewhere where nobody knows where we are. And we'll have to do it again,
Absolutely.
It's funny how time flies when you're doing this stuff. And they're about to pull us out with those hooks, those sheep hooks here.
Yeah.
So last parting words, my friend Jim.
My last parting words. Well, I do want to say that one of my dreams is that I want to bring back fun, high energy rock and roll that people can enjoy and socialize around and have fun with and listen to. And so I've got my own record label called Fun Guy Records. I'm doing a radio show that's terrestrial radio out of Palm Springs, California. That's a rock and roll music radio with Reverend Horton Heath. And I'm not sure if it's a lot, having a radio show is a lot of work. So I'm kind of stretched, but then again too, just keeping Reverend Horton Heath going, helping as many people as I can, and people, I really have to focus on people who deserve the help. And that's just, some people don't want to help themselves, but I want to try to help people and bring back good high energy musicianship, rock and roll, and that's about it.
Genuine art.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks, Jim, for coming, and thank you for watching our show today, and we'll see you on the next episode. Russell Hobbs Show. Thank you.